Hey everybody, want to welcome you to Not Just Roommates. We have a topic that we kind of want to chat with you about, and it's kind of the topic of expectations in your marriage. One of the things that we discover a lot of the times when people kind of want a divorce or they want to separate is because of unmet expectations. They feel as though their spouse is not meeting their needs. So we're going to talk about, and maybe you can shed some light on how do you handle that when your spouse doesn't really meet your need?
Well, I think that there are different levels for people. Some people, unmet expectation is right now your spouse simply isn't cleaning up the house and you're putting in more work with the chores and you want them to pitch in more.
Right.
And then there are other people who won't socialize. They just won't talk to their spouse. And so one person in the marriage is really invested in trying to hear more from their spouse, and the other person isn't really communicating as much. There's so many different,
kind of different extremes.
Yeah, right. And so depending on where you are, I think some of the things that we will give today will actually be helpful for you. So the first thing I'm going to say is this: we're all our own worst critics. We're all our own worst critic. And so now that we're married, that means I also am going to criticize you.
Yeah, the spotlight is now on your spouse.
Absolutely. And so since we're closest to one another, we technically need each other to give each other more grace and to be pumping each other towards greatness and becoming all that we could be. So we need to be our best encouragers, but a lot of times in marriage, because we live with each other and all of our flaws, we end up becoming our worst critics. And that's hard because basically you're living with a person who is always either trying to correct you, put you in your place, tell you what you did wrong. And after a while, it's not really a land of enjoyment when every day you come home and you got to look into the eyes of your worst critic. And so I think that one of the things we need to remember to do every now and then is just back off of their flaws. Just take a couple of steps back and stop looking at how bad they are or whatever they're doing is so disappointing to you. And that's not to say that the issues of unmet expectation or the areas of unmet expectation aren't pertinent or that they're not valuable or what you're thinking has no truth. It has weight to it, but God doesn't heal us of every flaw in our lives in one day.
Sure.
In fact, He chooses to love us despite some of our bad habits. And over time, He's going to deal with certain areas that need to be healed and delivered and set free. He's going to deal with that over time, but He doesn't do it all at once. And I'm so grateful that He gives us grace and mercy.
One of the things that if you're the spouse that sees a flaw in your spouse, maybe it's your responsibility to take that to prayer.
Yes.
Kind of uplift them in prayer and, put them on your prayer list and say, God, I see this in them, and this could possibly hinder their growth in you. I pray, God, that
But even in that prayer, it's not rooted in the other problem that I feel with the expectation thing, which is self-centeredness.
Sure.
So if I'm praying for them, it needs to be that I'm genuinely praying because they have, it says, and I know that this is a different way of seeing it, but it's like you're seeing a character flaw, and you can either look at that character flaw as something that's just bothering you or something that displeases God, and you can look at it as from a different perspective of like a doctor curing a patient of a disease. That person they need help. They don't need to be beat down.
The doctor can't get offended because of the patient is sick.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole point. And so I say, number one, back off and realize that you may be overly judging them. You may be judging them harshly, and the complaining or the being frustrated is really not productive. It doesn't lead to a productive end. And so what I would challenge you to do, if you wouldn't mind, is remember your own need for grace. I think this is something that's also forgotten, is back up off of their area of failure or weakness, and then remember how much grace and mercy we need individually. Again, going back to God and His relationship with us, when I think of you and how much grace you've given me, if I become self-righteous and I think that you're the person that's always the fault, you're the reason why it ain't working, and whether that's true or not, at the end of the day, just me having that persona about you, this perspective of you being the reason, you are the reason, it's just me blaming you, that doesn't heal the relationship. And I'm not talking about denying a real need for healing. That can come through marriage counseling. That can come through some form of proactive activity that can bring healing in your relationship. but me just simply looking at you being this motherly judge or this fatherly judge over the person that's supposed to be my best friend, it's really not going to lead to productivity. So that would be the thing I would say is like actually, and I want to challenge all the couples out there listening to write a list of the things that you appreciate about your spouse. Mm-hmm. Like, when was the last time, and this was hard for me to do in the moments where you and I were really going through some things and I was frustrated, felt like you wasn't meeting expectations. It was like God challenged me to have to say, okay, Sean, well, what has she done?
Yeah.
What does she do well? What is it that she provides consistently day in and day out? And that's when I started to realize, man, things ain't as bad as they seem when you're in the heat of the moment, unless all you focus on is the heat.
Right.
And so it's not.
But if you back up a little bit, it becomes a little cooler.
Yes. And so I just believe there has to be this moment where you remember how grateful you are for that person who's had your back and they have supported you. Maybe in this season, they're not doing it as well as they have in the past, but has everything that they've done in the past just been kind of water under the bridge, so to speak, and now what the relationship is only the reflection of a moment where a person may be weaker in the relationship. Mm-hmm. It's like you don't want to abandon the covenant for that.
Yeah, they just may need your strength. They need to lean on you a little bit.
Yes. And so the third thing I will say is remember when things in your relationship were great. Remember when things in your relationship were great. Mm-hmm. And then try to make those moments happen again. Mm-hmm. And if that means for a moment, you just kind of take your criticisms and your judgments of those and your frustrations, and you kind of personally, through prayer with God, you're going to say, I'm going to bury the hatchet. I'm going to give them a clean slate instead of this list of last month they ain't take out the trash. And the month before that they ain't take out. That's 5 trashes that ain't been taken out. And instead of us having this long list of shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and what they haven't done, to where we now have this kind of this profile of them, you know what I mean? This character sketch of all the bad. How about we just throw that away real fast and just say, Father, I forgive. It's over. They can't fix what they did wrong Monday. They can't fix what they did wrong in 2016. God, I'm going to give them a clean slate. In fact, I'm not worried so much about what they're going to do for me, but I'm going to become an expert at ministering to them. Yeah. What is it that you can do it may be a time for y'all to take a vacation, to find yourselves, just getting some rest. It may be a time for y'all to do a staycation, find a hotel, go to a park, walk around the neighborhood together, get away from the monotony of just coming in and setting yourself up yet again for disappointment. Right. And so I just think that it's a powerful thing to remember the times when they were good, and then sometimes we've just stopped doing those things that made the relationship really good to begin with. And so if you're struggling with unmet expectations, I would say first back up off of them, remember your own need for grace, and then I'm going to say from here on out, lower your expectations.
They're not perfect, and they never will be perfect, and they won't get it right on the first try.
Or the 100th try.
Yeah, and so I like what he said earlier. You have to consider yourself. You have to consider how much grace Jesus Christ gives to you.
Yes.
And do the same for your spouse.
Yeah. And so with that in mind, remember, make a list of what you are thankful for from them. And here's what I want to do. I'm going to give you this last little tip. After you make that list of what they've done for you or what they do for you, then I want you to give them a celebration of what it is that you appreciate about them. Man, I'm going to tell you something. That may break some things right there in your relationship. Just to come in one day, and it ain't about the complaining or the disappointments or the frustration, but you just walk in and you just bless them. You just be good to them.
They'd be shocked. Because what they're expecting is a complaint.
Yeah, a frowny face. Yeah. That separation, that feeling of, I'm mad. Whatever it is that we do, whether it be spoken or unspoken body language that communicates disdain for their failures. Instead, this time you're going to come in, you're going to celebrate them. Do it by faith. Just walk in and be good to them. Love on them. Yeah. Even though they're not perfect. And what you're going to find is that what they say, you draw more bees with honey. It's the same way. You're going to draw your spouse with kind words. Yes. You're going to draw in your spouse with humility and love. And as you do that, you're going to see some healing begin to take place in your marriage. And what happens is every time you do this, despite their imperfections, that's real love. And it's sowing seed in your relationship that eventually is going to produce a harvest of unity. Yeah. All right.